Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a f*** about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. Welcome back to Zestology. This is the podcast all about wellness and energy. And a few years ago, I interviewed Daniel Reid, one of the world's top experts in Taoism. And I'd read his book, which is celebrated on Chinese medicine and Taoism and the history of how it all came about. And it's so much fun, his book. I thought it'd be nice to get back in touch with him. When I spoke to him a few years ago, the interview had quite an impact on me, so I got back in touch. And since I'd spoken to Daniel, as you hear in this podcast, he'd moved from Byron Bay in Australia to Chiang Mai in Thailand, and he's also written 2 more books since I last spoke to him. Wild memoirs. So these are a lot of fun, and that is hence the title of this podcast, because that's what he's written about: sex, drugs, and the Tao. Wow. Tao is pronounced Tao, just in case you're wondering. You probably know that already, but just explaining it for you. So Daniel Reid is just an extraordinary human being, and what I like about him is that he's super into this sort of wellness stuff, but he's not stuffy about it, and he'll happily write a memoir about all his misspent youthful adventures. So you will enjoy this one. Former Zestology guest, Daniel Reid on Zestology now. Here he is again. I originally found you because I read your book on health, sex, and longevity. Yeah. And you wrote that book. You were born in 1948, and you wrote that book, was it about 30 years ago?
Yeah, I wrote it in 1985, 86.
Right. So I thought it'd be really interesting to ask you your reflections on the all of those parts, but firstly, the longevity part, bearing in mind, you wrote that in 1985, 1986, and here we are in 2022. And you're I think you're the same age as my mum, actually. How do you reflect on the longevity part 30 years on?
Okay, there's 2 aspects to this. I believe that no one can live beyond their destined lifespan. I think we're all born with a sort of an expiration date, used by such and such a date, and you can't get beyond that. This is a personal belief of mine. But it's very easy not to live your full to your expiration date. It's very easy to die before your time. So in the one sense, that means don't worry too much about longevity. When your time has come, your time has come. But what I think the difference is between practicing Qigong and eating properly and all that, because some people might say, well, if that's the case, so why should I do anything? I might as well just drink and smoke and run around. Well, it's a quality of life. There's no point living to 85 if the last 20 years is in an old age home or in a wheelchair. It's the quality of your life, especially in your older years, that makes a difference. And that's where, eating properly and breathing properly and doing Qigong, exercise, and so that it will, and keeping your blood circulating and your energy circulating even while you're older, because Qigong is not, you get better at it the older you get. It's not like mountain climbing. An 85-year-old person can practice Qigong as well as you or I can. So it's the quality of life. And the other thing is, can you extend lifespan beyond your destined amount, your expiration date? I don't think so, but it's very easy to die before your time. You're not guaranteed to make it to your full lifespan potential just because it's there. It's very easy to die before that. And so it does have an effect on longevity, definitely.
Yeah.
And on the quality of it, because there's no, like I said, what's the point of being crippled or having, being in senile dementia or whatever, having had 3 heart attacks and still being alive. This is how Qigong comes into the picture. It maintains the quality, not only overall in the long run, but even from day to day.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting because on this podcast, one of the topics that we feature quite a lot is biohacking, and we speak to experts who, some people who think they want to live to 180, for example, and they think it's very possible with modern technology increasing. I wonder if that, I mean, firstly, I wonder what you think of that, but all you're wagging your finger.
No,
tell me more.
Believe it. I don't think it's that. I know I've read about this stuff too. First of all, genetically, we're designed to live to be 120, more or less. That's what and then you move on. I mean, we're designed to die as well as to live. Okay. Yeah. The potential of the genetics is 120. People now are living to be 80 or something like that. Okay, so we're already short-lived. And that's just because of toxic conditions in the world and stress and all kinds of other things. Poor diet and no exercise, all of these play into it, but we're already on the short end of the stick. Now, biohacking, they're saying, well, you can we're basically saying you can change the genetics, the genome, in a way that it will allow you to live to be 180 or 200 or 500. I don't think it can be done that way. Because it's not, you've heard of the word epigenetics.
Epigenetics, yes.
Okay, it's the way you live your life that counts.
Yes.
And other factors. It's not the genes. You just hack into the genome like they're trying to do with mRNA vaccines, for instance. Well, first of all, that hasn't done any good at all. It hasn't stopped this whole thing in this so-called pandemic or plandemic, whatever it really is. It's still around, and it doesn't stop infection. They even admit that. Well, so what are you taking this shot for? You still get infected, you still transmit it. So that's not working. It's your immune system that protects you. So if you stay healthy and you're breathing right and eating right, your immune system will respond to just about any invasion. You don't need those things. So I do also read about, in my book, I talk about this guy, Li Qingyuan, who will live to be 236, a Taoist. And he had to be very careful. He outlived like 12 wives and he had about 100 children and all. He ate very carefully. He was a Chinese doctor. He did Qigong and he meditated a lot. I think he was like pushing the limits of our natural genetic abilities to live long. But the other have you ever read any of Castaneda's books?
No.
Carlos Castaneda, and it's about the shamanic tradition in Mexico. And he talks about these sorcerers who've been around, like for 500 years. And I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, but they're working on an entirely different level. They're working on a level of energy. They're somehow channeling energy down from the sky and up from the earth in a way that just keeps the system running. But that's not a genetic factor. Their genetics are the same as every human being. I mean, every mouse has the same genes, every dog has. So does every human. So it's epigenetics that counts. It's whatever your genetic makeup is, plus how you use it and how you live.
Well, I think some people would say that is epigenetics. That is how they are intending to live to 180, not by necessarily altering the genes. But
that's not biohacking. Biohacking is altering the genes.
Well, it depends on there's a couple of different definitions of biohacking, but by taking radical supplementation, for example, or stem cells, or you mentioned meditation, for example, all of these sort of things, and some of the more radical approaches could help to increase our lifespan.
It could. But I think just like if 120 is what we're designed for on average, and we're only living to 80, that's 40 years short. I think you can extend it the other way to 180 by really by radical supplementation, as you said, and all that. But you have to also be very careful about your environment.
Yes.
You ought to be somewhere where there's clean air, and electromagnetic radiation is a really negative force. Yeah. On longevity, 5G, and
we're very conscious of that.
6G and all that. That's having a very stunting effect on health and longevity.
Yeah, you mentioned pollution there. I remember when we went you're in Chiang Mai, obviously. When we went to Chiang Mai, I do remember being, obviously it's a beautiful town in the mountains in the north of Thailand, but actually it's quite built up and there's a lot of traffic, isn't there? And
the smell of
the exhausts.
Cheap gas, diesel fuel, and it's not. That's why I'm saying I don't even know what we had in mind by coming here at that time. But by selling our house, we locked ourselves out of that place, and now we're here. But it's not a good place for longevity, really. I mean, I know some people here, monks and some older women, who are 90 years old, and they've lived here all their lives. So maybe they have strong genetics, or they're just lucky. I don't know.
Well, you could move into the mountains to get the fresher air, couldn't you?
Well, I suppose, but I don't want to get a car here. I had one here when we lived here in the 90s, but it's just, going shopping, and then you got to drive for an hour and a half through traffic, and then another hour and a half to get back, unless I found a way of living in the mountains where I didn't have to leave.
Yeah. And community is also a very important part of longevity, isn't it? It sounds like you've got a great community there. You've got everything on your doorstep. You can go out to eat. You can see friends, and that's great.
That is great. I know. I miss that about where we were before, because we did have a really good community there. Yeah. And very few people. I mean, the whole Shire, as they call it, Byron Shire, only has less than 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Chiang Mai is over 1 million.
Wow.
Big difference.
Yeah.
So that makes a difference. Being in a place where most people do live in toxic air and cities and all that, you just have to focus more on your practice, pay more attention to what you eat, getting good water and stuff like that.
Interrupting this podcast for one moment to let you know that it is brought to you by the shortcut to more calm and more connectedness, Sensate, who are my podcast partners for this month. And not only that, by the way, if you're someone who wears an Oura ring, I think you can increase your heart rate variability using Sensate as well. It's a genius device. You hang it around your neck, and it, through sort of conduction techniques, makes your whole body vibrate. And you listen to a soundtrack as well. And what it does is fairly incredible at getting you into a different place quite quickly. There is loads of science behind it. You can do 10-minute sessions, 20-minute sessions. You do longer if you want. But, 20 minutes for me is plenty long enough to get into a very good state of relaxation. It's nice before bed. But in my experience, if you do it an hour before bed, you'll just drop off there and then. So you need to make sure you do it at exactly the right moment, because it is really strong at supporting your stress response system. And let's face it, we all need a bit of that at the moment. If you go to getsensate.com/Tony Wrighton, you can get 10% off by using the code Tony. That is getsensate.com/Tony Wrighton. Use the code Tony and get 10% off. It really does work well. And it's sort of a shortcut to reducing stress and anxiety and staying cool, calm, and connected. And I think one of the great things about this thing is that there's a lot of gadgets and tech advances in the biohacking world which cost a lot. This is, I mean, it's a bit of an investment, but it's not a new mortgage. So getsensate.com/Tony Wright and use the code Tony for 10% off. Now, back to the show. And then what I didn't realize until today, when I was doing a little bit of research before this podcast, and I'm very excited about this, is that you've written 2 books since we last spoke, which are not classic. It's fair to say they're not classic Taoist texts, are they, Dan?
Definitely not. But I mean, I do bring, in both of them, I bring some of the spiritual work I've done.
So tell people what the books are.
Well, it's called Shots from the Hip. And one is on sex, drugs, and the Tao. That was from my wild young days in Taiwan. And the other one I subtitled Energy, Light, and Luminous Space, where I focus more on the things you can't see, invisible aspects of life, which include energy, light, and luminous space, basically your basic nature. I do have some other things in the second volume too that have to do with some of the crazier times and things I've done. But in a way, I think I want to just show that you don't have to be a monk in a monastery or have to be raised in a Tibetan cave to take an interest in and understand and benefit from these practices. Mm. If you just keep going, keep yourself alive, you can benefit them from any background.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading those books a lot. Not only because of my interest in your specialist areas, but also because I've enjoyed traveling around Asia over the years, and a bit of a reformed hedonist myself. So I think I'm just going to enjoy the books, basically, quite apart from the fact I might learn a thing or two as well.
If you're a hedonist, you'll enjoy them.
Yeah.
Most people do for that reason. But especially in the second book, I do focus on some of the more interesting things I've done through teachers.
Great. I look forward to that. Yeah. So what do you hope and aspire for through your own practice, through your own professional career over the next few years? What are you looking to achieve?
Oh, I don't know. I think peace of mind. And, it's hard to get peace of mind here sometimes, all the noise and distractions. But I think essentially peace of mind is something that you have to establish within. I have a tendency, I have had, as you'll see from my books, my memoirs, to be impulsive, to do things on impulse and self-indulgent and in hedonistic pleasures and things like that. I think as you get older, you have to make peace with yourself. And that can be done just about anywhere. Mm. So, I would like to be able to achieve some sort of peaceful resolution of things that have bothered me for a long time. And sometimes some of these things you're not even aware of. They're just you feel that could come from traumatic experiences when you were young. It could come from past life karma, whatever. They're there. And unless you actually deal with them, then you tend to act on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to become aware of that. Ultimately, everything comes down to vibration. The ultimate, the bottom line, the common denominator, how far do you take it? Like we used to think, atoms, the atomic structure of neutrons and electrons and all that. That's the smallest thing. And then we find out from quantum physics, no, there's subatomic particles, and you can take it down further, and suddenly they just disappear. And you have waves, energy, vibration. It's vibration. And then you find out from quantum physics that when they've got these things in a chamber, or however they're looking at them, electron microscopes or something, they find out that they respond to consciousness, awareness, which is light, energy, the bottom line vibration of the nature of life and everything. All matter comes down to vibration. And then but it can change back into a particle, and it can then link up together to make form, responding to what? To the light of awareness, so intent. So with intention, you can make your energy work in certain ways where I believe ultimately the way healing is going to go is that people managing to get their minds, their higher minds, the basic light through intent, to get the energy to go in and repair your cells, your genes, your DNA, because ultimately it's all made of energy. Yeah. Those things are vibration too. They're just denser, more densely packed vibration.
That'd be the most incredible technological advance in an area where we're not actually that advanced.
No, we're not, because, if you can find out what's really wrong with you, that's another problem. What's the root source of your problem? Yeah. Is it in fact that there's something wrong with your heart or your liver or something, or is it some vibration in your field that's out of balance, or some emotional issue or something which has to be dealt with that's interfering with the normal process of your health? And there's no medicine, no physical medicine that can fix that.
Well, there's two questions that I ask everybody. I asked you 6 years ago. I'm going to ask you again. What is one book that you would recommend, and one tip for living with more energy and vitality? And perhaps, since you mentioned it, vibration as well, or good vibration.
Wow. Books. If there's books on breathing and qigong and that sort of thing, I would recommend B.K. Francis, Bruce Francis. He's an old friend of mine, but he was in Asia for 16, 17 years, and his last teacher was a really highly advanced master in Beijing. And he was with it. This guy only took 3 students. And oddly, one of them was an American, my friend Bruce. And wow. he's got about 10 books out. And his way, he has he's a lineage holder from that tradition, northern China. And so if it's qigong, energy work that you're interested in, and qigong means energy work, I recommend him. His books and his website is energyarts.com. So okay. I don't have one particular book.
No, that sounds good. I'm going to definitely look him up.
Yeah. The one that I started with is called Opening the Energy Gates of the Body. It's very basic beginning, but he's got, all of his books are quite good. So I would recommend that. And what was the other question?
The other question was, what is one tip for living with more energy, vitality, and good vibration?
Breathe properly. Breathing is one of those interesting things that it just straddles the border between physical and energetic, physical, visible and invisible. After all, how do you breathe? You're using your lungs and your diaphragm and your throat, it's a very physical thing. And yet the air is invisible. And then what it does when within your body, especially in your energy meridians, is also non-material. So, and it's very quick. It's very direct link. One proper breath can make a huge difference. It's like when, sometimes you just can't quite catch your breath. You know how it is?
Yeah.
It's just, you're trying. And then when you do, it feels so good. I mean, everything opens up and starts flowing again. And that's something that's so quick and instant that I'd say on a daily basis, if you breathe properly, the benefits on a daily basis are probably even better than eating properly. You can sort of afford to not eat properly sometimes. You can always detox or do a fast or make up for it later. And of course, the link between food and energy and everything goes through digestion and circulation and metabolism. It's a long thing. So I would say breathe properly is the best tip I could give.
Good stuff. And sex, drugs, and the Tao.
Yes.
Is that still your life now?
No. The Tao, yes. I mean, sex as it comes up. Drugs? No, not really. I use Chinese medicines and things, but I do use herbs, medicinal mushrooms, stuff like that.
Great. That Thai whiskey is pretty strong.
Oh, Mekong.
Mekong, yeah. Oh, the Sang Som. Do they still have Sang Som as well?
Yeah, I think they do. I can't drink anymore. It just wipes me out.
Yeah. Same with me, actually. I wonder if there's something about, as you get more in tune with your body and your energy, alcohol seems to just wreck me the next day in a way it never used to.
Yeah, well, it's a poison, really. It's an organic solvent. For example, you get some herbs, ginseng, put it in a jar and fill it with vodka, leave it for 6 months, and then you've got a ginseng essence. And if you don't want to get the alcohol, you just heat it up on the stove, you evaporate all the alcohol, and then you've got a tincture.
Yeah.
So, but what do you think it does to your brain cells and your liver cells and your blood? It's an organic solvent. So if you're drinking heavily for years on end, basically you're dissolving your brain and your liver.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be dangerous. I mean, a little bit of alcohol can actually be beneficial. It stimulates circulation, stuff like that. But, drinking for getting loaded is not a good idea.
No. But the medicinal mushrooms, you still do that occasionally?
Oh, yeah, I do. I mean, I'm talking about not the magic mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
The psychedelic ones, that's fine too.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that, or ayahuasca or something, if you're going to do that sort of thing, you don't want to be doing crank, amphetamines.
No.
Anything like that, or cocaine or something. But psychedelics, they have their use. As long as they're natural plant medicines.
Yeah.
So mushrooms, but I like for me, my favorite combination in the mushroom area, actually one fungus and one mushroom, is the combination of reishi mushroom, but to get the real reishi is really hard to do now. And cordyceps, which is a fungus that usually grows high on the highlands of Tibet and Western China. It's a fungus. It's something that's like a caterpillar. It looks like a caterpillar in the summer and dries up into a fungus in the winter. It's actually a fungus. Very good for breathing.
Wow.
It increases your assimilation of oxygen by up to 40%.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So people in the highlands always used to use it. So that combination is my own favorite. And I like to eat mushrooms. Mushrooms are a very interesting plant. You know, they hide from the sun.
Yeah.
And some people say they came from spores from outer space. And who knows?
Dan, it's really good to catch up with you. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And we can do it again sometime.
I'd love to. Yeah. So just remind people where they can find out more about you and the books.
My website is danreid, one word, .org.
Yeah.
That's my website. All my books are listed there, and there's links to buying them. And some of our health programs are on there too, and there's some background information.
Fantastic. Okay, Dan, really good to talk to you, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And obviously, if you want to go back into the archives, head to TonyWriting.com and search for Daniel Reid in the search box in the top right, and you'll find the other interview that he did a few years ago. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening to Zestology. As always, there's plenty more over on the website. I'll be sending out my 3 Zesty Things newsletter very soon as well. And just before I go, a special offer from Exhale Coffee, who have become my friends recently. This is if you're in the UK, I think this is the sort of the organic, mindful, bulletproof coffee that you want to be going for. It's excellent. It suits me with my histamine intolerance as well. They do so much testing on their beans, and if you use the code TonyWriting, I think you'll get a free bag of coffee. So that's good, isn't it? If you head over to Exhale Coffee, you can check them out. And I want to say a big hello and thank you to my podcast partners, Sensate. And again, if you go to getsensate.com/TonyWriting, you'll get all the details on Sensate. Use the code TONY for £20 or $25 off. I mean, it's a really good chunk off with Sensate, and that is something that I've been using a lot recently, just to take the edge off, really. You know, you want the mindful coffee to put the edge on, and then the Sensate to take the edge off. Sometimes I do think, why am I having a coffee just before I'm about to meditate with the Sensate? Oh, but it's so nice, and it's one of these, you know, some of these biohacking gadgets cost a lot, and some of the biohacking tech has subscriptions and so on, and I always find that pretty annoying, actually. One of the really nice things about Sensate is there's no subscriptions, and it is definitely affordable, and it's a great way to get into a completely different place in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or however long you want to use it for. Maybe 20 minutes twice a day. So getsensate.com/TonyWriting, use the code Tony, and let me know how you get on. That is it for this week's podcast. I'm walking around London at the moment. It's a lovely day, so I might go back to my garden. I'm supposed to be working, but I might just go and do a Sensate. Have a good week, and I'll speak to you next time.